Hi everyone. Today I am bringing in my husband, Patrick Lemieux.
Good morning. Good morning, sweetie.
Good morning. He is an agent for a cycling team and a few professional athletes, triathletes, cyclists. And we're going to talk about how to get sponsorships and just everything about sponsors. I asked Instagram for some questions, and so I'm going to be hot seating these to Patrick. So we got a lot of questions.
But to be fair, you have a ton of experience in this. So collectively, I think we'll be bouncing stuff back and forth and talking about experiences learned, etc. So
Okay.
Very cool. Okay, let's get through some of
So
this.
a lot of questions about how do you approach potential sponsors or companies? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. So look, in my experience and in my line of work, obviously I've got what I would call a direct line to a lot of different brand representatives, somebody in sports marketing, for instance. So there's a big part of my job where I can reach out to those contacts and those relationships that I've created.
I think more the question comes, from people that if they don't have an agent. Let's start with that. When do you need an agent?
Sure. I think so. What I tell people all the time is everyone needs an advocate. So I, think, look, who can I be an advocate for, and when is the correct time in one's career to do that? I think for somebody like me, where I've got, clients and teams that I represent, the reality is that, I need it to make financial sense for myself and for a potential client that I have. So I look at it and go, okay, where's this athlete? Where are they in their trajectory, in their career? Where are they currently? Where do I think they're going? And do I think I can help them? Really boil it down, my job is to make them money. So,
but one of your biggest criteria is a passion for winning. Your clients,
100%.
And you often actually, before you get a client, look at their coach and their team around them.
Yeah.
Am I giving away too many of your secrets?
No, I don't think so. I think that's not something that I talk about, but obviously, I identify, athletes first, and then I'm very curious, who's their coach, and what we see there typically is that's in an athlete, like there's so much leadership that happens there, and that's who I really want. I want performance to be steering the ship, and not finances to be steering the ship.
Yeah. So back to how do you approach sponsors? Let's say like somebody who doesn't have an agent, how would you say they should go about doing that? I can answer it as well if you want me to.
How you've done it but it's easier now more than ever. And how do you typically, in the case of like if you're trying to get a hold of somebody, how would you do it?
Well, you often look for like people that are already kind of advertising and spending money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, something that I do is Instagram is a great way to connect with companies now. And so, for me, I think it's not so much how you approach, but why are you approaching them? So for me, if I want to get sponsored by a company, it's because I use their product. They're in line with the same values as me. I'm super passionate about it. And so I explain that to them, and I explain why I want to partner with them. And then you also have to tell them what you can do for them. Don't just say like, hey, I'm looking to, get free product, or I'm looking for $1,000 or whatever it is. You have to also say, what can you do for the sponsor? It's not a one-way street. This is definitely a two-way street. And sponsors need to have value. And so you need to show your value.
That's right. What else do you have?
How do you know how much compensation you should be receiving?
Great question. Typically, what's funny is I always say, people will say, what's my value? And I say, well, how many people want to pay you in this given category? And, they'd say, well, I have one bike brand that wants to pay me. And I said, well, you're somewhere between $0 and a dollar amount. And they're shocked that I say 0. And I said, well, if there's nobody else competing for it, it can be down to 0. It could be just a bike, and that's it. And I said, then that's great. So I've developed some proprietary tools to help establish what an athlete's value can be, and how it can grow. And there's some measurements I have there.
Like your measurements kind of go into, you can look up how much it costs to run an Instagram ad. Right. And then you can, for 10,000 eyeballs on Instagram, you can buy an ad for X amount. So then you kind of look at like your athlete and you say, okay, how many eyeballs are you getting? And you can kind of go from there. Those are kind of your the tool you've kind of created to figure out a value. But sometimes it's also
Yeah, and you
just
have to
experience,
it's
right?
experience here. You have to understand, what, in the case of triathlon, right? There's three categories: swim, bike, and run. Those are, the swim brands, the bike brands, and the run brands all pay very different things, and it's a very different range based on that. So you can't just take what you knew you were getting from the bike brand and bring that over to the swim brand. It doesn't work like that. So it's case by case, and for me, it's gaining experience. So
Yeah, and I think back to as well triathlon when I had 5 spots on the suit. And so those spots are very visible. Now I'm in running and there's 1 spot. And so you can kind of take that into consideration too. And in triathlon, the more years that went by and the more experience we got, the more we're like, okay, a spot on the suit costs X.
Yep.
And we wouldn't give a spot away on the suit unless somebody paid that much. I think, once you know your value as well, it's important to stick to that and not, say, oh, I'm getting free products, so I'm going to put their name everywhere.
Right.
If you have people competing for those.
That's right. Yeah, we call that your get out of bed number.
That's right. Do you or should you have attorneys review your contracts?
The answer is always, it helps. And this is something that, to gain, I would call it like just context or experience. You'll learn more throughout the more that you look at them. So maybe to start, you'd have maybe that's a little more front loaded. And then as you gained experience or you had questions pop up, those could be done on a case by case basis.
Excellent. How have athlete sponsorships changed with social media and the ability to self-promote? Now, we've been in the thick of this. When we started, there wasn't really...
That didn't exist.
Social media wasn't even in my contracts, I think, when I first started.
Yeah.
That requirement
So
wasn't.
typically it was, when you started, it was very almost just traditional, right? It was like branding on a suit, and you knew you were going to have race day capture. You were...
Appearances.
I think back to your original contracts, a lot of them had bonuses for magazine covers.
Yep.
That's a thing of the past.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that. So I would say social media has greatly changed it in the sense that, you can do now what are quite normal is the one-off Instagram deal, the one-off post. That wasn't a thing. Your contracts were typically, Jan 1 to December 31, and there might be 1 year, there might be 3 years, there might be 4 years. But that's really changed, and we've had deals that, may start in October and go for 3 months, may start in April, go for 6 months. There's now less rules than ever. There's really no guidelines, I would say.
Yeah, and I'd say it's almost... It's easier to do your, I think, obligations now with social media. In the past, I'd be abroad for 9 months and they'd be like, well, you need to come to LA for a 4-day photo shoot in the middle of training season. And now there's still photo shoots, but now actually something that you've helped me with that I think has really helped sponsors is we create our own media.
Yeah, you're your own content team.
Right. So if I create this photos for sponsors, and so that's something that's really changed and I think allowed me to take on more sponsors because I'm no longer needing to take 5-day breaks to do photo shoots in the middle of the season.
That's right. Great question.
Do you purchase from a company before getting into a partnership with them? I'll answer this one because But I always do. So the first thing, if a sponsor approaches me, the first thing I say is, okay, I need to try the product because I don't want to partner with a product unless it's actually in line with my values. And I think that's something that you need to have in order to benefit both sides of the party.
Yep.
And I think this kind of leads into this next question of how do you make sure sponsors line up with your values? And that for me is something that I've been looking into more and more. And you have conversations with your athletes weekly and you talk about would this be a good fit? And you have to do a little bit of research and make sure that it is a good fit because you don't want to partner with brands that aren't meeting your needs or don't have the same values as you.
That's right.
I'm trying to think of a specific example when I've turned down many sponsorships. Some that have offered way more money in a brand than another brand because the brand that was offering less money was more in line with my values. And I think you have to kind of figure that out. And in order to create long-term partnerships, you need those values to be in line.
Yeah. And so the easy one here is always just on the performance side, right? Does the company make a product that will help you perform on race day? If yes, then you might be willing to take less money for it because this product's bottom line is gonna help me win. So
and that answers the next question of, is it all about the money? for support, or are there opportunities that outweigh money? And I think,
oh yeah, 100%.
yeah, there always is. You know, you talk about the product, so like you need the best product if you want to perform your best. Not only that, though, you also, oh, I had a thought. The products, what else outweighs it? Oh, and then there's other things, like if they're willing to promote you, like put you in ads, that can have value as well. So there's things that maybe they don't pay you, but can have benefit for the athlete.
That's right. Next question.
Do you always need an agent? Kind of answered this, but you can answer it.
No, I think the answer is no. I think that there's some people that can handle the workload. There's others, you know, that have come to me and said, you know, look, I'm stressed out. I can't manage the deal flow plus do my training, and I don't understand what my value is as an athlete. Like, would you help guide me through that process? So there's some athletes that, you know, can handle that quite well, and there's others that can't.
Yeah. Now, how do you secure a contract that covers pregnancy? This is something that, so sidebar, Pat's actually not my agent.
Yep. My
agent is Lindsay, who works with Wasserman, and they have been amazing at promoting women's rights and kind of been on the front line of creating opportunities for women who are pregnant and, you know, coming up with all these opportunities. But I remember when I first got pregnant, we thought, like, we prepared for being able to get $0.
That's right.
So do you have any tips for how to?
You know, look,
I have a tip.
I think
you can create value in other ways.
You know, you can create value in other ways. I think that right now it's something that doesn't concern me with a lot of agreements that I have. But, you know, it's if that was something that one of my clients was wanting to do, that would be something that I would be transparent about and want to have input into the, you know, that agreement or that cycle that we're in.
I think it is always important, like you said, to be upfront, explain what's going on, and, you know, there are other ways to create value.
That's right. Especially
now with social media. Are there times when you should turn down a sponsorship?
All the time. You know, I have athletes that turn down agreements all the time, and it could be because there's a conflict in a category. It could be because they don't want to use the product. It could be because they have 6 sponsors and the thought of adding a 7th is overwhelming. So there's plenty of times always to turn down a potential opportunity.
How do you ensure your athletes are getting fair support, male and female? So I think that from sponsors. So I think this is asking about the gender equality gap.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, you deal with it a lot, I think.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. You know, I have some clients that are getting paid, you know, more than their male counterparts. And then, you know, I have, obviously on the cycling team side, that's traditionally a sport that's been underfunded on the women's side.
Right, like, can you just tell us what the minimum pay is for a male versus a woman in cycling? Because there's these minimum. Right. It's different than the sports I've been in, where there's this minimum fee.
On the UCI World Tour side, right now, that, you know, it's roughly $53,000 for the women and $63,000 for the men. Those will be equal, I think, in 2024. So I'm really happy with the progress being made there. I think then where you've got a bigger disparity right now is just obviously to get onto a men's World Tour cycling team from a brand standpoint, it's very expensive. And the women's side is, you know, I would say a much lower entry.
Because you're paying the women less.
I don't think it's because you're paying the women less. It's because there's less riders on the team, and the reality is currently they do way less race days. So you know, when you look at it objectively and divide, you know, the amount, the spend on the race days, there's still a big void, but I think it's closing very, very quickly. And I think in a few years you'll see that the day rate for the women they will be earning more than the men. I really do believe that. I think and I want to be a big stimulus for that change.
Awesome. Is it better to seek out sponsorships or wait for them to come to you?
ABS, always be selling. No, you gotta knock on doors all the time. So if you want deals, it's very, very rare. And you think about in your career, you know, you've had some stuff come to you that, you know, I don't want to say is like easy, but, you know, you've got to be aggressively asserting yourself and saying, like, look, I'm Gwen. This is how I could help your brand. I love your product, you know. And I think about, you know, what you did with Scratch Lab too.
Yeah, we created a product that is now their highest selling product, isn't it? They can't.
I don't know if it's the highest selling product, but it's a very no. It's a. I mean, you created a market for that product. So I think it's very important to display how you can differentiate for a brand.
Yep. What do you look for in a sponsor?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's somebody with in the world that we're in, they've got to have great product. They've got to be something that you can win. I think on the bike side, the bikes are so competitive now that you cannot be with a product on the bike that doesn't work. Everything has to be super innovative, very good. So that's the big one. And then it's obviously how are they advertising? Who are they advertising with? Where are they advertising? That's very interesting. And I guess I go back to innovate.
Yeah, innovation. Oh,
yeah.
We love innovation.
Yep.
What's the process like of negotiation with sponsors, both old and new?
I love the process. I think of these as negotiations as conversations, and I would say I'm open. I'm painfully transparent is what I always say, and that's sometimes I think people think that I'm lying to them because I'm just so honest about where things sit in this negotiation, whether I'm
like when we were first dating.
Right, sure. And I'll just say, these are the cards I'm holding or I'm not holding, and this is what we can do. So I think each negotiation is very, very different. But my methods are, we'll just call it like I'm painfully transparent.
Yeah, and I think that's where I have the reason for me wanting an agent. I'm an introvert. I think some athletes have a difficulty kind of like asserting their worth. And I kind of, I'm so late in my career now. I feel like I know what my worth is. And, sometimes honestly, an agent just kind of has to be the bad person.
They have to be your advocate.
Yes, they have to be your advocate. That's a better terminology.
Yep.
And you have to kind of know what your client can do. So, if you have a client that's, for me, like if I'm going to a big race, can I stand on my feet at the expo the day before? Probably not for a really long time. So you kind of have to know when you're talking to sponsors, like this works, this doesn't for the athlete. And then when you're renewing, you can kind of go back and see like what worked, what didn't. And a lot of times sponsors can also look at like the metrics and like, how much have they sold and that sort of thing. So it's, yeah.
One or two more questions.
That's it?
Well, don't you think we've been going for 15 or 20 minutes already?
How do you market yourself as you begin your career to get better sponsorships without results? We'll end with that one.
Easy. This is something that I deal with some of the the younger athletes that I have, and I would just say, one, it's demonstrating your personality, and then two, I just think like, the athletes that I have, they're doing a physical activity, and these feats of strength that they can do or some sort of skill are so cool and something that everyone aspires to. And I would say just like demonstrate those things, whether it's like, I think about back when you were training for triathlon, it could be showing your run splits, it could be showing your bike power. It could be, if you did some cool open water swim that was really scary with the sharks, that would be something that's differentiating. And I think about the people that I follow, they're doing tricks on their bikes, and that's something that I'm just like, oh, I wish I could do that. And I'm really into those things. So, maybe it's you're an athlete and you're super passionate about cooking, or you want to have I think in the endurance space specifically, I think showing some sort of feat of strength, and it could be a massive ride on Strava, it could be power numbers, any of those things I think that you can differentiate yourself with and give a look behind the curtain as far as like what you're doing for training. I think that's highly attractive to not only your fans, but then potential sponsors as well.
Yeah, and I think, something we haven't talked about, but we've talked about because is branding. Like you're just kind of talking about like figure out what your brand is and kind of lean into that. So, are you a mom, and are you passionate about zero waste? Are you like, what are you passionate about? Is it cooking? Right. And kind of show that side as well. And I think that goes a big way as well with sponsorship. Like figure out who you are, what you want to represent or what you want to promote. Like, do you want to help get young women into the sport? Do you want to help, create less zero waste, like not be more environmentally friendly? Figure out what you're passionate about in addition to your sport and use that as well in your sponsorship.
Yep.
So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A.
Can ask follow-up questions in the comments. Share with somebody that you may know that has interest in being sponsored, or they're a young athlete. I hope that this is helpful.
Thanks.